Hello, uh, Pad here with another do-it-yourself home build. Um, I tried to sharpen a knife yesterday. I have some sharpening stones, but I didn't really like the results, so I decided I'll make me a jig. I sharpened this pocket knife yesterday. What I bought from eBay, is these sharpening stones. They're only cheap. So I've got these three, which is 200 grit, 500 grit and 800 grit, and they're like diamond coated or something like that. I got them all from eBay. They were all on cheap. I think it was like £3 or £4 for all of them. So these have some notches there that they're meant to be mounted on some kind of rod or stick or jig or something like that. So I put it like that yesterday, and I was working my knife, changed grits, and then I have a very fine one which is an actual stone, that's a 2000 grit, same system again. And then I strop my knife using my buffing wheel, but I'm not very happy with the result. The grind isn't very consistent. See, when it focuses there, see, it's not consistent. It has the lines variate, and I'm not really happy with it. It's good and sharp. It will cut through newspaper, but it's not like razor sharp as I would like it. Well, the focus isn't cooperating. There you go. So I'm making a jig. I found this old piece of angle laying around. It's only flat bar, two flat bars welded together in the corner. You can either bend it or weld it or whatever. And that old piece of rod, this is I think it's something like 11 mil, I think. And that's it, a few bits and bobs. I'll need a couple of to weld a couple of pieces on this. So the concept is that the knife, any knife, will be clamped on this angle there like that, using a bottom piece of flat bar that will clamp it there, and then you will have a rod on which this will be attached. It's not my idea, it's inspired by a commercial knife grinder, so I cannot claim originality or claim that I invented it. It's not. I'm just making it up at home with all the material I have. So the idea is that you will have the stone mounted on that rod with holes on that side there that will guide you for the degrees you want to grind, to sharpen. So you will have the option of like 17. Well, I don't want to go 17 because it's too steep. Even kitchen knives, that's too steep. So I'm going to do 20, 25 and 30. 3 holes should be more than enough to sharpen any knives, 30 being for cleavers and axes, and 20 for this kitchen knife, and 25 for pocket knives and general use knives. So when the hole is drilled there, you have your fixed point, and then you'll always be at the same degrees doing that. Of course, the material I have aren't very clean because it's only scrap I have laying around. So I kind of marked that when the stone works, this is about like 20 degrees angle with those marks there. Of course, the flat bar there is just intact, so I have to grind that off there so that the stone will actually touch the blade and not touch the flat bar. there. So this I'm going to clean to get that off. I have a piece of flat bar there welded on this, which I have to cut off and clean, and I also have to clean that. And I'm going to do all that using my great new belt sander, because why not? I made it, why not use it? Grinder is ready, set up. We need to take that off. We need to clean that. We need to also take a portion of it off, because the sharpening stone will catch on that corner, so both these corners need to be taken off. And we need to clean our rod, well, down to there, I presume. So gloves, glasses and earplugs. That happens sometimes. You need to adjust, you need to make sure that your tracking wheel is set right. Good thing that happens, because nothing is ever ideal. You see all these things and everything runs so smoothly, but it doesn't in real life. Interesting.
Love is sacred, love is kind, but love is only a state of mind. It's in your heart and in your soul, when nothing hurts like letting go of all you had, go of all you want, and surrender.
So after sorting the belt out, it's the first time I use this grinder, so I don't know, I have to learn how to use it. Apparently the tracking wants the belt to be not center but that way to stay in place. I don't know, I'll learn as I use it. I'm setting somewhere. Well, this is actually the first time I used properly the grinder, so I'll learn. If I'm happy with that, I can always grind a bit more later. I think I'll do this one a bit more. Okay, these are done. I don't think might yet cut, might be a bit better. I'll do them a bit better. I think I'm quite happy with that. Having never used a belt sander before, I find it quite slow compared to a grinder. Like an angle grinder goes 11,500 RPM. This only goes 1.1400 RPM, so it's quite a big difference. What you get with this grinder is a very tidy, consistent grind, so you can actually control exactly what you're doing, which makes a hell of a difference when you're doing knives. When you're just grinding still, it doesn't matter. Angle grinding is good enough. don't know how much of this I'm going to use, so I clean quite a lot. I don't think I'm going to use much. The stone is there, so you only need that much again as travel, so I think down to there should be enough. We'll see. Well, again, this is the first trial, the first time I ever actually worked this grinder. It's only a matter of tracking, so it works fine when you get to the right point. This is only after 15 minutes of grinding, what you just saw. So I now understand why every person that uses this type of grinders uses a bucket with water below, because you have massive debris going out. So I think our grinder is done now, we don't have any more need for it. Our bevels there are ground, the rod is clean. Okay, on to the next step. Putting it roughly together, just with a clamp there. We clamp the blade on to see what's happening really. I used my angle finder there, and I've put the smallest degree that will ever sharpen a knife, which is 17 degrees, which is roughly these two marks there. So that there is 17 degrees. That's the smallest degree you can sharpen anything, which is something that will shade really. It's not a usable knife because it doesn't hold the edge, so you would sharpen a chisel or something like that at 17 degrees. So considering this is the smallest degree, we'll go. There. We need to drill and tap two screws, two bolts, to hold one plate to the other, which will create the clamp. So I happen to have these small M6 Allen bolts, so we have to make sure that the head of the bolt is clear of the grinding stone. So I think there is a good place for it to be. So we mark them and drill and tap them. We have to drill a 7mm hole on one of them, and drill and tap a 6mm hole for this to thread on the other one. So let's assume that they will go that way. This will have a 7mm hole for this to go through, and that will have a 6mm threaded hole which we need to tap. So my plan is to put two, one there and one there. That will give me a firm grip, and then I'm going to drill and tap a third one there. So when you have a blade, whatever thickness that blade is, this is like a, I don't know, 4mm maybe, you wind this back bolt at 4mm roughly, and then when you clamp it, your clamp is horizontal, is parallel to the blade, so you have a much better grip, because otherwise the way it is now, touching back there and you have the gap back there, all you're actually clamping is the back of the knife, the spine of the knife. Down there I can probably put my nail through, which means it's not pressing enough. So we'll do that. So this is now drilled and tapped. There's 3 tapped holes on the small flat bar and 2 7mm holes on the big angle piece. And the concept is, you put your knife there roughly, there, and tighten the back. This is only hand tighten, so tighten that just enough for the thickness, or loosen it for the thickness of the knife. And then when you put your knife up there, I need 2 hands to do that. So when you put your knife up there, the gap is quite consistent. There you go. See, you need to have a belly, you can hold stuff with it. So then you tighten these two. Let me just go out a bit. There. So when you tighten these two, you have a nice consistent grip and your blade is not going to go anywhere. So, well, it's too deep, but again with one hand I cannot do much. So you need like at least 15 mil for the blade to be sticking out, because if you don't have that gap from the end of the blade to the end of the clamp, your stone will be grinding on there, and you don't want that. So you need the blade clear of that, so you can actually grind your knife and not your clamp. So I'll set it with two hands when I put the phone down. And then the next step is, see, I've only put it together with a bit of tape just to see what's happening. We need to make a clamp on this now to hold the stone in, the grinding stone in. Next step is cut these two pieces out of a 3 mil flat sheet, just some flat. The smallest piece is going to be welded there, like that. So this will be the back clamp, if you will, the back stop. And the second piece, it's going to be folded over there, and then it's going to be drilled and tap. Well, this is going to be drilled, and we're going to drill and tap the shaft, the round bar. So then you'll put you'll put a bolt through there, and that will push your grinding stone against the backstop, which will be welded on, and that will hold it in place. So let's do that then. This clamp is now drilled and tapped. I drilled a 6 mil hole on the small flat bar, and I've tapped the 6 mil hole on the rod. So with that in place, the next step is to do that. Put the piece in like that, and then put that in place and mark it and weld it in place. The only secret to that is that when you weld there, when you mark it now, from your mark you have to go that way, just 1 mil or 1 or 2 mil, because if you just weld it there where it is now, this will just be loose. So you need this clamp, when you're tightening, you need it to be like 1 mil, to have 1 mil place so that it actually tightens. So put that there, mark it with your chalk and weld it 1 or 2 mil over there, close to that, to have a nice tight fit when you tighten that clamp. The small tab is now welded in place. I welded this small piece of flat on the bolt, so you can just hand tighten it, and it works as easy as that. You just put that in there, slide that in like that, and then just hand tighten. You don't need pliers, you don't need anything, all you need is just to hand tighten like that, and that will just stay in place. it won't go anywhere. You can just grind, fine. So with this done and with that done, the next step is to drill the holes up there. If this is single-sided, which means that there's only one flat bar with holes, it means that you have to flip the knife every time you have to swap sides, which is not very convenient. So the plan is I'm going to weld another flat bar down there, like that, with another set of holes. So then, if you're grinding the top of the knife, you put it on your vise like that, grind, and then release it, just flip it, find the corresponding hole again, and keep grinding without needing to unclamp your knife through the whole process. At the moment I don't have another flat bar. That's all the scraps I managed to find, so I'll do the one side. I'll drill the holes there, and I think for now I had a little piece here somewhere. For just now, just for this, mind you, I don't need to, because I can just clamp it there at the side. I was going to weld that below there, just to be able to clamp it on the vise, but I don't need to. I can clamp it like that and work on it, sharpen my knife. But I am definitely going to weld another one there, so that's double-sided, you just flip it over. The only difference, if you have another side with this setup, is with your knife, with your blade being there at that spot there, the position, the distance from this flat bar there to the holes at the bottom flat bar would be bigger, because your blade is at the bottom of this flat bar. But if you measure from that spot to the other flat bar to drill the holes, you need to account for that thickness as well, because otherwise you'll get a 15, let's say 17 degrees sharpen. But if you measure the same distance from here to down there, it's going to be steeper, I think, because it's going closer to the blade. So you need to account for that thickness of that flat bar to drill there. When I get another piece of flat bar, I'll do that anyway. So using your angle finder there, you set it, well, I'm doing 4 holes really. I'm doing a 17, a 20, a 25 and a 30. So you set it to your 17 there, like that. I've tightened my blade on there. It tightens up really nice. You cannot move it at all. I left from the edge of the clamp to the edge of the knife about 14 mil. And the thing is, you have to keep this distance consistent with any kind of knife you put in, because if I clamp this knife further out, it means that if I have a fixed hole there and this is further out than it is now, my angle will change, and then instead of getting your 17 degrees, you'll get a steeper, like 15 or 16 degrees. It doesn't make much of a difference, but it does make some difference. So I've tried this bigger blade, this kitchen knife, and I also tried this small pocket knife, and if I put 14 mil sticking out, I still have enough of the clamping this smaller knife. So I think keeping 14 mil there is okay for this build. Now the next step is to marker drill the holes there, which is the last step, until I get a piece of flat bar to extend the other side to make this double-sided. I've looked it up on the internet, and when we say we grind a bevel, we sharpen a knife to 20 degrees, it means to the center axis of the blade. So this is the blade. You have the thickness of the material there, which is the back, the spine, the very back. Oh, there it is, that's a good example. So the very back is that, these two lines there. Then you have your bevel, to which whoever made the knife grinds it. So you have the thickness, then you have the bevel there, and then at the very bottom you have your sharpening. That's what this and that are relevant to whether a knife is sharp or not. So from what I read on the internet, the very last bit, what you're actually sharpening to get your sharp knife, from the center, from the axis of the knife, you need, that's where you measure your degrees. So that angle there, from the center to that, if you're doing like a chef's knife, you're doing 17 degrees, which means that V there, if you put your angle finder, will be 34 degrees, which is a really sharp edge that you can, well, 17 degrees is actually a razor or a chisel, so you can actually save yourself with 17 degrees. A typical blade is around 22 degrees, so outside there to outside there is 44 degrees. With that in mind, and because it's a bit difficult for me to show you exactly how I put that, because remember, you have to go to the very center of the blade, not just rest it at the bottom there. You cannot just do that, because this is deceiving. Remember, there's already a bevel there, so you cannot take from that. It's a bit tricky. It's something like the center line of the thickness of the blade where you need to go to. It's a bit deceiving, so I cannot literally show you how I mark it. You put that there, and then with your angle finder set it to whatever degrees you need to set it. You mark your holes. That's the best thing I can explain it. And again, because I cannot use both my hands at this moment, I will get some sort of base for my phone to be able to do it properly. So yeah, I think I found a way to get it as best as I can. I remembered I had in the rubbish, please do not use a new blade, because you just cut yourself while doing this step. It's an old Stanley blade, which is only 1 millimeter thick, so you cannot really get much wrong with that. Then with this you can adjust your angle perfect. So I've just put a clamp there just to hold it in place and rest that on the blade. So this is as close as you can get. Then again, that's 14 mil away from the clamp. I always try to keep the same distance, so I have the same angle always. So putting my angle finder under the blade there, squaring it up. What this shows me, I've set it to 17 degrees, and that should be really spot on. What this shows me is that a Stanley blade is ground even finer. That must be something like 14 to 17 degrees, because this, the lighting isn't very good now, this here is actually almost touching perfectly on the blade, which means that a Stanley blade is sharpened to, yeah, like I said, 14 to 15 degrees. I'm never going to sharpen anything like that, so following our 17 degrees, which is like my chef knives are going to be something like that, this tells me that I need to lift my jig up a bit and then mark and drill the holes. So we're going to do the same with all the degrees that we need to go to. I'm doing a 17, I'm doing a 20, 25 and 30. So I'm going to mark these 4 holes first and then drill them out. This is an 11mm rod, which is really rough. I need to clean it better. So I'm drilling a 12mm hole. I don't want much slack. It's getting dark now, so I need the light. After marking all of them with the same method I explained before, I center punch them all. So the first one down there, that's actually 15 degrees, because 17 degrees, the two lines were touching each other, which means that the hole you're going to drill isn't going to have any thickness between the previous and the next hole, so it's just going to fall through. So instead of 17 degrees, I made the first one to 15 degrees. I don't think I will ever sharpen anything to 15 degrees, but it doesn't hurt having another hole. So there you have it, 15, 20, 25 and 30 degrees. So now the next step is drill them to M12. The thing is, because this is a rather thick flat bar, if you see the angle they've been marked on, this is what we have to do with the holes. So you drill straight and then you have to clean the top of the hole with a round file, or at this case I have an die grinder, and then you have to drill to clean the hole. You have to make it more of a slot rather than a hole, because if you're sharpening a big blade, you have to move your rod, so it has to be something like that, wide. So the width is not going to be 12, it's going to be something like, I don't know, 18. Add 2-3 mil both sides, because when you have the rod in the hole like that, and if you have a wide blade, you need to go there and you need to go there, so that movement there needs a wider hole. And then because the flat bar is 6 mil, that's your flat bar, you drill a 12 there, you drill a 12, but because the rod goes on an angle, that corner up there is going to be in the way, so that corner will need to be ground out like that with a die grinder or a file, so that you can go in with your rod without catching up there. I will show it in action. Drill the 4 holes at 12. The rod is 11, it easily goes in there, but it's still far away from touching where it should touch. And that's why I said before that we need to grind the top of these holes, not the bottom, because if you grind the bottom down there, it's going to change your angle. We need to keep the bottom, but only grind up there to let the rod drop down to where we want it. And also, it doesn't go much to the side as well. So we need to make a slot like the drawing I did there. So the hole needs to go to the side and up, not down, so we don't mess with our angle. I think that's enough for today. I'm hungry and cold, so more tomorrow.
When it wasn't for free, that's why these thirsty bitches didn't come here with me. Move along, girl, there's nothing to see. And what a blessing every second is. Missed calls and messages. I miss the nights when you would call, just checking in.
After finishing all the holes, I decided that I cannot be bothered to do it double-sided, so I just welded this flat bar there for the vise to have it. I don't sharpen knives every day, so when I do, I'll have to flip the knife a couple of times. not the end of the world. I only come to my shed to just pass some time, so I don't mind. I've put some duct tape there on the ends of the clamps so I don't scratch my knives, and I think it might give me a bit of a better grip. So I'll just put it together and see how it works. It's all together. I think I'm really happy with the result. I've done just a little bit there, and the grind seems to be nice and consistent when my camera focuses. It's very easy to use, and you always get the exact same angle. So I think I'm very happy with it. Didn't cost me anything, just some of my time. This is a newspaper that's been sitting here in the shed for weeks. It's all wet and soggy, and that's how sharp this knife is. This is just ridiculously sharp. I've never managed to sharpen a knife by hand. Well, I've never managed to sharpen a knife that much, either by hand or mechanically. So my jig works. So I hope that was an inspiration for a couple of you guys to do the same. It's a lovely cold day here. So I think I'll be sharpening my knife and then getting myself a nice hot cup of tea. See you later.